You have already felt that bloating that won't go away, that pressure in your abdomen that keeps building throughout the day, and that silent embarrassment that makes you avoid certain situations. Some people live with this for years without understanding where it comes from. And the worst part is that the cause is often something that seems completely normal. I remember a patient, I'll call him Robert, a man in his early 60s, active, careful with his diet, who came to me completely lost. He said his marriage was suffering, not because of arguments, not because of emotional distance, but because he was so afraid of the embarrassment from gas that he had started avoiding his own spouse. Dinners out, trips, simple everyday moments. Everything had become a source of anxiety. And when you stop to think about it, you realize the physical problem had become a life problem. I'm Dr. Thomas Ellsworth, and here on Senior Health, we talk about digestive health, aging, and quality of life based on what science shows and what actually works in practice. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, it's worth doing that now. It's simple, and make sure you don't miss the next videos. The starting point for understanding this problem is knowing that gas is natural. The intestine produces it as a normal part of digestion. But when the amount exceeds the limit, when bloating becomes a daily occurrence and discomfort starts affecting your routine, the body is saying that something in the digestive system is out of balance. And that imbalance almost always has an identifiable cause, sometimes more than one at the same time. The first cause worth understanding is poor protein digestion. When the body doesn't produce enough digestive enzymes, foods like meat and eggs reach the large intestine without being fully processed. There, bacteria ferment that material, and the result is exactly that bloating that won't let up. This is more common after 50, when enzyme production naturally begins to decline. One way to investigate this is a simple test. Use digestive enzyme supplements for about 30 to 60 days and observe whether there is improvement. If there is, the body was asking for help in that area. Another factor that few people associate with the problem is intestinal dysbiosis. The intestine hosts trillions of bacteria, and when the balance between them is broken, the bacteria that feed on sugar and refined flour start to dominate, and they produce gas in large quantities. A diet rich in ultra-processed foods, low in fiber, and high in sugar intake is the perfect environment for this imbalance to take hold, and it does not resolve on its own. There is still a third factor that surprises many people: the way you eat. Talking during meals, eating in a rush, not chewing properly. All of this causes a person to swallow air without realizing it. That air ends up in the digestive tract and becomes exactly that discomfort that seems to have no explanation. It sounds too simple to be the cause of such an uncomfortable problem, but it is real and very common. And there are two more points that complete this picture. The fiber question, which needs balance in both directions, as both lack and excess can generate fermentation and gas. And food intolerances, especially to lactose and gluten. In the case of lactose, it is worth knowing that products labeled lactose-free often simply add the enzyme lactase to the milk. For very sensitive people, this may not be enough to prevent inflammation. A temporary removal of these foods for a few weeks can reveal a lot about what is happening in your intestine. And what you discover through that test may change the way you eat from that point forward. Now that you understand where gas and bloating come from, the question that remains is, what can you do while the body is still going through that adjustment process? Because we know that habit changes take time. The microbiome does not rebalance overnight. Enzymes don't return to ideal levels in a week. And in the meantime, the discomfort continues. This is where the TEAS come in. Not as a definitive solution, but as real tools for relief and digestive support. And I'm going to show you 3 options based on what research indicates and what works in practice. The first is a combination that seems simple, but has a well-constructed logic behind it. Ginger with chamomile. Ginger has properties that stimulate gastric emptying, meaning it helps the stomach process and move food along more quickly, reducing fermentation time. A study with volunteers showed a significant reduction in gas and intestinal discomfort with regular ginger use, with no relevant side effects. Chamomile acts in a complementary way, with anti-inflammatory and soothing properties for the intestinal lining. Research also indicates it has action against the bacterium H. pylori, associated with gastritis and ulcers, which shows that the benefit goes beyond immediate gas relief. To prepare it, cook 2 slices of ginger about ½ inch thick in water for 15 to 20 minutes. Then turn off the heat, add 3 tablespoons of chamomile, cover the pot, and let it steep for another 15 minutes. This tea can be taken up to 4 times a day. And before anyone asks, no, ginger does not raise blood pressure. That is a myth that has circulated for a long time and has no scientific backing. The second tea is less well known, but has a very specific action for cases of persistent gas and slow digestion. It is artemisia, also known as wormwood. It is classified as a digestive bitter and works by stimulating the production of bile and gastric juice, which directly improves the body's ability to break down fats and proteins. The result is less residue reaching the large intestine, and therefore less fermentation and less gas. To prepare it, use 2 tablespoons of dried leaves in 1 quart of hot water, steeping for 10 to 15 minutes. There is an important point here. This tea should not be taken for more than 15 consecutive days, and the limit is 3 cups per day. Prolonged use can put strain on the liver. Pregnant women should also avoid it entirely. But within these guidelines, it is a powerful tool for breaking a cycle of discomfort that has gone on too long. The third tea is the most indicated for those who experience cramps along with bloating, or for those with irritable bowel syndrome. It is peppermint. Studies show that the active compounds in this plant relax the muscular fibers of the intestine, relieving contractions and reducing pain. Laboratory research also suggests that it inhibits immune cells that contribute to the inflammatory process in the intestine, which helps explain why the relief goes beyond the immediate symptom. The preparation is simple. 5 peppermint leaves in a cup of boiling water, covered for 10 minutes. A practical detail worth mentioning for all 3 teas. Avoid taking them after 8 in the evening. Not because they are harmful at that hour, but because the diuretic and digestive effect can interrupt sleep with trips to the bathroom, which disrupts the body's recovery during the night. These 3 teas have something in common. They are called carminatives, which is the technical term for substances that help expel or reduce the formation of gas in the digestive tract. But each one acts in a different way. Ginger with chamomile works on the speed of gastric emptying and on inflammation. Artemisia stimulates chemical digestion, improving the breakdown of food. Peppermint acts on the intestinal muscle, relaxing it and relieving pain. Depending on the profile of your discomfort, one may work better than the others, and for some cases, combining them throughout the day makes sense. But there is still a fourth element that almost no one mentions when the subject is bloating and gas, and that may be undermining any effort you are already making. I will bring that up next, and when you understand it, it will make a lot of sense. There is a factor that appears in almost every case of chronic bloating and rarely gets the attention it deserves. It is not a specific food. It is not a bacterium. It is the withdrawal moment. You know when you decide to improve your diet and suddenly it seems like the bloating gets worse before it gets better. That has an explanation. When you start increasing fiber intake, for example, an intestine that was used to little activity needs to adapt, and during that adaptation, fermentation temporarily increases. Many people interpret this as a sign that the change is not working, and give up exactly when the body was starting to respond. The same logic applies to removing gluten and lactose. When you eliminate these elements from your diet for a few weeks and the bloating visibly decreases, you have valuable information about your body. But if you reintroduce everything at once, the discomfort comes back strong, and then the tendency is to think the problem is something else. The process needs time and observation, not perfection, but consistency. That is what separates those who get results from those who keep going in circles. Another point that deserves attention is chewing. It sounds too basic to be in this conversation, but digestion begins in the mouth. When you chew well, salivary enzymes already begin breaking down carbohydrates before the food even reaches the stomach. When you eat in a hurry, swallow large pieces, or talk during meals, that process is compromised. The stomach receives a larger workload than it should, and what is not properly processed will ferment further along. On top of that, the air swallowed during the meal goes directly into the digestive tract and becomes gas. A simple change in the pace of eating can reduce a good part of the discomfort without any other intervention. Now, putting everything together, it is possible to build a practical protocol for daily life. In the morning, on an empty stomach or right after breakfast, ginger with chamomile tea is a good choice to stimulate digestion from the start of the day. If cramps or intestinal tension appear throughout the day, peppermint comes in as targeted support. And during periods when digestion feels slower, heavier, with a sense of fullness after meals, a short cycle of artemisia for up to 15 days can help rebalance that process. All of this combined with slower chewing, attention to intolerances, and when necessary, a test with digestive enzymes for 30 to 60 days to assess whether enzyme deficiency is involved. There is no single solution that works the same way for everyone. The intestine is a complex system influenced by diet, stress, sleep, medication, and health history. But what science shows, and what is observed in practice, is that simple and consistent interventions produce real results. The TEAS are not substitutes for medical care when the problem is serious, but for everyday discomfort, for that bloating that shows up every day without a serious identified cause, they represent natural support backed by research and safe when used within the given guidelines. And going back to Robert, that patient I mentioned at the beginning, after a few weeks, combining simple dietary changes with regular use of the TEAS, he came back different. Not cured of something serious, but relieved of something that had been weighing on him far more than it seemed. Sometimes what looks like a small problem is taking up an enormous amount of space in a person's life. And resolving that is also taking care of your health. If you made it this far, tell me in the comments, have you ever tried any of these teas before? Did you notice a difference? Or is there another habit that helped you reduce bloating in your daily life? I would love to read what you have to say. If this content was helpful, leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe and hit the notification bell. There is a lot more content on digestive health and well-being coming your way.